Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review. In this episode, Night of Bloody Horror, directed by Joy N. Hauk Jr. in the year 1969, part 10 of the Public Domain Madness series. Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review, your guide to the wild world of science fiction action horror. With me, your host, Mila Sipka. Now in this episode, we look at the film Night of Bloody Horror, which premiered in the US on the 9th of August 1969. Now, this film was directed by Joy N. Hauk Jr., who was the son of a theater owner, who owned like 200 cinemas across the United States. And he also dabbled in filmmaking as well. I'll explain it a little bit later, but first I should say that this is a public domain film, and such is available anywhere, but my review print was part of the Mill Creek Pure Terror box set, which has 50 public domain sourced films, although some films were actually from the Crown International Library, and many of which are in extremely variable print quality, ranging from old unrestored film reels to VHS tapes. There are some prints in this set that are in surprisingly decent condition, but not any more than that. Mill Creek's box sets are only sold in the USA, but can easily be imported for online shopping sites such as eBay. Anyway, as for the story, after being released from a mental hospital where he served a 13-year stint for accidentally killing his younger brother with a shotgun, Wesley Stewart is having problems with getting a female companion, but not in the way you think. I mean, he has no problems attracting women, but they keep getting brutally murdered after about a few weeks of being with him, whenever he gets a bad migraine. The police believe he's a bloodthirsty serial killer despite his pleas of innocence, but things ratchet up to unbearable levels when his old doctor decides to move into the family mansion with Wes and his mother to try to help Wes regain complete control of his faculties. But the real killer is somebody close to him who wants him to suffer bad for causing the death of his brother and thereby causing the suicide of his father. Now, Night of Bloody Horror was one of a small string of films made by Joy N. Hauk Jr., the son of a theater operator who owned something like 200 cinemas throughout the United States, and who decided that since his daddy was also responsible for producing some B-grade films in the 1950s with his Halco production company, examples including the classic Turkey Mesa of Lost Women, and the Ed Wood crime caper Jailbait, to name two examples, it was inevitable for him to make his own movies for the family business and cutting out the middleman to make even more money. Now, in the case of Night of Bloody Horror, Hauk Jr. makes a cheap C-grade psycho thriller that, with its concept twist, joins a long list of films that utilize some component of Alfred Hitchcock's legendary pro-slasher Psycho. Some films even use parts from Peeping Tom, the British version of Psycho, that British equivalent of Psycho, that wasn't at least on equal footing with Psycho in terms of quality, but was sunk thanks to a very nasty British critical reception, although its cult reputation has been getting stronger by the year in terms of Peeping Tom. And there are many examples of this, such as juvie thrillers like Anatomy of a Psycho, which I reviewed quite a while ago, and pretty much any slasher movie of the 1980s, technically. Anyway, Night of Bloody Horror is one of the most nondescript thrillers I've ever seen in the subgenre. The killings are done largely off-screen, and when they do get shown, the makeup effects are thoroughly on the dodgy side. A severed mannequin head and crayon-sourced stage blood is all that it consists of. Although there are also two pretty unconvincing long-dead corpses shown repeatedly, who with their ghoulish death grins look like they're secretly holding their gleeful contempt at the proceedings. While this exploitation requirement of nudity is only met with at the start with a brief pair of boobs, more on that later. Being made in the late 1960s, there are some pointless optical effects that makes the whole thing a joke. The film even marketed as being filmed in violent vision, which consists of the blue swirls that manifest on screen whenever the protagonist has killer headaches, and the rock band that shows up halfway through are needlessly photographed in negative colors, an effect that looks out of context and very daft. There was also the typical $1,000 insurance policy stunt taken out to get more bums in the seats, which also didn't quite work in this film's long-term favor. The film does put in a little bit of ironic reversal on the Psycho template as far as kills are concerned. While Psycho had a mentally disturbed man, Norman Bates, conducting killings of beautiful women, but imagining that his long-deceased mother was responsible thanks to a bit of a split personality complex. Here we have a man who's mentally disturbed, but not enough to kill anyone. Instead harboring his fair share of needless guilt for accidentally shooting his younger brother dead during a childhood mishap. His father killed himself from the grief, but his mother was actually still alive and secretly killing off his female friends to punish him for tearing the family apart. And there are not one but two mummified corpses on the show here, which pretty much top Psycho in that department. I mean, Psycho only had like one mummified body. It was pretty cool. Anyway, aside from that, Night of Bloody Horror is pretty much a non-starter. The pace is modest, but there is a lot of talk and not even nearly enough atmosphere to make up for the slow moments. In a word, boring as heck. Night of Bloody Horror, my ass. Now for the gore. Finally, I get to talk about some gore this year. I mean, the previous films I reviewed this year have been light on the group, but here there's a little bit of bloody goodness for the gorehound in me to enjoy, even though it's almost negligible. Severed hand, an axe right through between a woman's boobs, and 2 long dead corpses on display. Not significant enough to enjoy, but hey, it's stuff that Apatros gorehounds year. Now for nudity, there's a very brief sex scene in the film's start with Lisa Dameron showing off her nicely perky breasts for about 5 seconds or so of total screen time. Night of Bloody Horror pretty much gets a D rating from me, 2 out of 10. A fairly bad film that is too nondescript to make any sort of impact on the late 1960s exploitation scene. And to be honest, it's not really that great a film. Now, if you want to find it, the Mill Creek Pure Terror box set is probably the best way to go, but I'm not sure if there are other releases out there. Probably is, so you might want to check around for that. Hope you guys are staying safe. Enjoy that. I don't do requests, but if you want to know of a particular film in my collection, just hit me up in the comment section, I'll answer. And that's it for this review.